Hello everyone and welcome back to Crater City, and today I am proud to announce that the Iron Golem farm is fully functional. But after making it, I've got basically no resources. So today we are having a mining episode, so I'm out here on the noble horse Ford Astra, named for the car that I originally tried to learn to drive it, to find an unexplored cave system in which to venture and find some resources. And I don't generally like doing caving episodes. They generally tend to cover content that you will see in every single caving episode on every single channel in creation. So I figured I'd make this one a bit of a discussion. Have a nice little talkie about what's going on, or a particularly interesting subject. And the particularly interesting subject that I have managed to rattle out of my noggin for this particular endeavour, and I have almost no idea how I managed to get Ford Astra up here. It was pitch black when I brought him up here, so it has been a bit of time. But the topic I managed to decide for today is the origin of morality. Now, morality in and of itself is a fairly deep and important subject that a lot of people like to throw around as being integral to our society and civilization, and even our species as a whole, but rarely does it really pay much attention to the specific morals beyond the origin. That is to say, whether these are innate traits for the human species, or having a soul, for example, is often considered to be the source of our morality. Whether our morals are imbued by a divine creator, or whether they're just sort of there. So, as a consequence, there's a lot of potential for... No, I'm gonna have to remove that, okay. Whoop, nope, wrong fill. Okay, stay here. Don't get your wheels nicked. This is a bad part of town. This is actually way north of the compound, so naturally there is not much sign of life. As you can see, there is iron here. The compound's area has been more or less stripped completely bare of iron already. And my goal here is to more or less just pick up anything I can find. I did not bring my Silk Touch pickaxe, which is actually almost broken already. And, true to my luck, this didn't go fast. So, most people, when they're trying to figure out what the origin of morality is, they try to think of what could generate the kinds of morals that we have. So, for example, we always say that killing someone else is a negative thing. That's considered to be a moral thing. It's an imperative, as certain old school philosophers would say. But there's also other things, like you're allowed to defend yourself, even occasionally meaning that you're allowed to kill others, to kill someone else. So it's not really it may be an imperative to avoid doing that, but it's not actually an absolute. So it's not precisely an absolute moral. It's a relative moral. So we then have to consider that how many of our morals, or of the things that we hold as being morally or intrinsically good, are actually absolute. Because if it's absolute, it's generally held that it must be divine in nature, that it can't have just happened by chance or circumstance or all sorts. Now, this is where the religious people like to butt in and say, well, of course they're absolutes, because they bring in the concept of sin. And a sin is something which is bad or evil or whatever. No, it's not a cave, something, it's something. Regardless of your motivation for doing it. I submit, and I grant you there may be some people who disagree with me on this, because that's been the way since the dawn of time, that there is no such thing as sin. Because I submit to moral relativism, and we'll explain what that means in a moment, but if you have an absolute morality, then it means that something is wrong no matter why you did it, and you should never do it under any circumstance. So, let's see, what kind of things do we have that are... Oh, I guess I'm in Extreme Hills. Because they're a silverfish. Nope, that's a silverfish block. That's not. We go this way then. And I do not have a shovel. Okay, do this the old way. Well, we have things like don't kill, we have things like don't steal, don't covet thy neighbour's wife. You'll tend to find that a lot of the things that people generally hold as being morality tend to surface throughout most religions. There's a reason that more or less every civilization has a coda against murder. There's a reason that more or less every civilization has a coda against theft. And a decent portion of this is because if we didn't, then our civilization wouldn't run very well. But we can take that to be a larger scale of things. If our civilization would fall down from people stealing from each other, for example, or beating each other or killing each other, then maybe those are things that are to be considered inherently moral as far as the human condition says. I'd probably state at this point, I am not a philosopher, or at least I am not an expert philosopher. I'm not someone who has studied philosophy, and I'm not someone who should be considered an authority in the subject. But I'm one of, well, it's something that I've given a lot of thought, as is the case with a lot of subjects, as my longer-term subscribers will definitely know. Whoop, that's a silverfish block, and that's a silverfish block. So, come and get some. I did bring my good sword for this, because I knew I'd be facing some silver. And why am I getting 2 of these guys? I'm sure that I should only be getting the 1. Okay, those aren't silverfish blocks, thankfully. Grab a gold iron, good. So where was I? Yes. So we have these things which suggest that we have, certainly we have morals, but that we have things which could be described as being absolutes. However, things get a bit more complex once we review the circumstances in which these actions are taken and seen as bad. So, for example, someone steals, and as a general rule, we consider that to be bad, but we generally consider different degrees of theft to be worse than others. So, for example, stealing a loaf of bread, petty theft, is considered to be less of a crime than stealing a car, or stealing thousands upon thousands of pounds of money, or whatever. So, not all breaches of morality would appear to be equal, then. And indeed, this goes to the extreme, insofar as self-defense. For example, if you are forced to kill someone to protect your life or the life of someone else, then it is generally deemed to be less of a breach of morality than just straight up murdering someone in cold blood. And there are even further things of if you have to steal to stay alive, to avoid starvation, in the case of bread, for example, then it is deemed to be less of a crime than to actually be just stealing. And this becomes a situation that English law, at the very least, knows very well. And I'm having every single last possible trouble finding any kind of cave, it seems. Still, I have picked up, like, a bunch of iron so far, so that's something. So in English law, which is something I have studied actually, there is the concepts of mens rea and actus reus, both Latinate terms. So mens rea is the motive of an action, and actus reus is the action. So if we were to use murder as an example, then the actus reus is the murdering, and the mens rea is why you murdered them. So, for example, self-defense versus cold blood versus all manner of other reasons. And in order for someone to be considered guilty under English law, they have to be demonstrated to have performed the actus reus and held the mens rea at the time. You can also find that if someone was coerced or unable to control their actions at a time, or was just plain unlucky and accidental, that they do not have the mens rea and are therefore not guilty of a particular form of the crime. Alternative versions exist, for example, manslaughter versus murder. Manslaughter is murder that's done accidentally, basically. I had to do it in short form. I know there was a cave around here, because there's a big cave noise. Jeez. So, now we're in this situation of relativity. Now, as we said, laws tend to follow morals by virtue of humans. We're in this particular situation of relative morality, and what that means is that things can be good or they can be evil, or bad, or whatever you want to call it, based upon the circumstances that they are performed in. So it is okay to murder someone given the right circumstances. It is okay to steal given the right circumstances. It's okay to be adulterous given the right circumstances. An abusive husband who would allow you to get divorced, for example. So, what is our origin of morality if it is relative? And certainly it would appear to be relative. Well, there is a standing rule in physics that there is no such thing as perfection, and this would be the cave we heard. Huzzah. I'm going to go down here, aren't I? Kunk. There's a standing rule in physics, and this is by no means a hard rule. It is more or less a working rule of thumb, so it shouldn't be taken as authoritative as such, but it's generally accurate. So it's sort of the directions that a cabbie will give you. Which is that there is no such thing as perfection. And that is more or less appealing to the fact that nothing is ever precisely, or at least it's rarely precisely as the formula says, and it's extremely rare for things to be perfectly balanced. The early universe, when matter was relatively uniform, for example, if that had been perfect, we'd have nothing in our universe today. It would just be perfectly uniform gas. But it was slightly ununiform. It wasn't perfect. And from that, gravity took hold and created more or less everything that we know today. So as a standing rule, perfection doesn't exist. Absolutes in the universe don't exist. They're generally rules of thumb. It's worth noting, in science, a fact is just very likely to be true, or very likely to be as close as possible to the truth. It's very rarely held to be actually the truth, because all science is subject to review, and if there is compelling evidence of something not of something being wrong, even if everything else says it's right, then you have to go with saying it's wrong. A theory is as close to a fact as modern science likes to get. There are laws, but that's getting into a whole other subject. But basically what I'm boiling down to here is that the universe isn't perfect. The universe is relative, and the universe, well, even time itself is relative. And the universe, consequently, is a very uncertain place. It lacks absolutes. It lacks perfection. So if we were to try and find an origin point for relative morality, then the most logical place would indeed be the universe. And in terms of humans, the universe interfaces with us in the form of simply evolution. The evolutionary method is tremendously relative and unreliable, and very, very shoddy workmanship, to say the least. So it would seem then that our relative morality comes from evolution. So how does that apply? We've got these rules. We've got these morals that seem to be more or less hard-coded into us. Don't steal, don't kill, that kind of thing. So where do those come out of evolution? If we want to show that evolution is the source of our morals, we have to demonstrate that evolution can generate them. And then, of course, is likely to have generated them. But let's see. Well, we said before that we have these rules that seem to be a good idea for most religions and societies and civilizations in order for them to function. So don't kill people, don't commit suicide, don't steal, etc., etc. Well, these are all social rules, And we've seen before, self-defense. You're allowed to kill in self-defense, provided, of course, you deem it to be viable and worthy and reasonably necessary. So, where does that come in? Well, if you're trying to build a social group, and bear in mind, humans are very pitiable creatures. We are absolutely rubbish when it comes to, like, fending for ourselves. Although most experienced hikers would tell you a different story. We have no natural defenses, we're just fleshy little things. And, I mean, look at me right now. I'm wearing enchanted armor. Granted, it's armor that I've scavenged off of dead skeletons. And I'm just wandering around and people are still taking shots at me. My standard thing is to still attack at range. I am clearly not a predatorial kind of guy. I'm clearly a fleshy, weak thing. So how do fleshy, weak things survive? Well, I'm on a multiplayer server. So there's your answer. We get together. We work in a group. We work in hunting packs. We survive by getting along, and in order to get along, we have to have certain ground rules laid in. So, don't kill other people. Why? Because then you have no one else to help you survive, and also you very much reduce the chances of the survivors saying, that seems like a guy I'll help out later down the road. And if you steal from someone, same thing happens. They'll be less likely to help you because you keep taking their stuff. You keep deteriorating their chances of survival. And this happens throughout all of the very common morals that are held in society. Certainly a lot of religions mirror laws that make sense if you're an organic organism just trying to live, just trying to survive, get along. Don't touch another man's wife. Don't touch the wife. Don't beat your slaves into death because you've lost them, and now they're not of any use to you. Not that I remotely condone slavery, and not that I would remotely want to suggest that evolution considers it to be advantageous. Although, certainly evolution has made a good argument for things like domestication of other animals. Wolves, for example, used to be predators of ours. But that's, again, a whole other subject. And I'm not sure where to go from here. I do want storage. 49 iron, 5 gold, and an emerald. Okay, well, let's just keep running around while I just keep talking. So it would seem, then, that our morals mirror principles that are advantageous to our weak, fleshy thing survival. Which would suggest, once more, that evolution is responsible for at least some portion of our morals, and we've already demonstrated that they're relative things, that they're not absolutist things. They can be, if you're a particularly zealous individual, you can apply them with the rigor of a dying samurai warrior or some kind of religious zealot. But, by and large, morals are relative. So it would seem that the origin of morality is in our evolution. It's in our genes, it's in our blood, it's in our species. This unfortunately leads us with some problems, because if indeed our morals are relative, then there is theoretically a situation that can be conjured for more or less the excuse of anything. So, for example, we've used previously the example of self-defense for committing murder, or what would otherwise be murder, rather. Now, what if I was to use some other reasoning to decide to take the life of someone else? Maybe to facilitate theft, for example. So say I'm in their will, and I really want to have the big house in the country. But they're hanging on pretty well. They're old, but they're still alive, and I'm getting really antsy to have that big house in the country. So I slip a couple more sleeping pills than they usually ask for in their drink one night. They die. I've committed murder, and I've now gained something from it. So for me, that's advantageous, especially if I can cover up the crime well. So that other people don't start to say, hey, this is me, big guy, I shouldn't help survive. This is the problem of moral relativism, and it's the thing that terrifies people a lot when they try to consider what side of the equation, moral or relative or absolute objectivism, that's called, morality that they want to be on. Because they're scared, they're worried that there'll be someone that will come along and be an utter idiot, or be an evil genius, basically, and abuse the relativity of their morals in order to get away with something. The unfortunate thing is that, yeah, that happens. It happens a lot. It happens quite a lot under the religious, actually. But by and large, you will generally find that people of all clans, creeds, and ethos will find the reasoning to do what they want, more than sticking to what they would otherwise espouse themselves to be following. So again, it would seem that we live in a morality relative kind of universe. So let me know, because we're about time up. I'm just gonna keep digging around here for a bit anyways. Let me know what you think the origin of our morality is, and especially let me know what implications you think that might have for us as a species, because I'm rather fascinated to hear what you guys think. And once again, I reiterate, I am not an expert in this. I am by no means authoritative on the subject. I have just done a lot of reading and contemplating in my time. So I apologize if I've gone way off base, or if there's a very convenient and simple analogy or argument, or even just turn of phrase to explain half of the stuff I've just spent 20 minutes talking about. But with that in mind, I shall catch you all next time. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and or favorite. Follow me on Twitter and subscribe to be notified of future updates. You can also check out the website where most other content is uploaded. That's all for now, catch you later.